Hi, everybody. This is Raphael with It's Time for You to Rewrite Your Life. And I'm here with Tara Packer, who I met in a Peter Sage workshop. And I was astounded when I saw what she was doing. And my own past put aside, I really like to support her. And what she was doing was talking about how can I help more people? How can I build my donations to help people who are incarcerated? And she uses EFT, emotional freedom technique. And I would really love, before I go into a little bit about me and how that caught my attention, that some of the people on my podcast don't know about my past back in the 1980s, and some of them do from some podcasts. But I would like to ask Tara, how did you get into this helping incarcerated persons? And you have a TAPS program, transformation something. You can explain that about that program so people can help you. And tell me, please, a little bit about how you got into that.
Sure. It's kind of an interesting story, and it goes back to my childhood. And I was clair, or still am, clairaudient, which means I can hear things like in my head as if someone is talking to me. And for some people, that may sound really strange, but for me, that was very normal. So when I was a child, I heard one day you're going to work with men in prison. And I thought, well, how, I'm just a kid. How is that going to work? And so I continued to question that over the decades. And it finally came together, flash forward, finally came together when I work as a transformational well-being coach, and I was doing more professional development around trauma because I work somatically and I do a lot of emotional and trauma reprocessing work with people, including with therapists and including with trauma specialists. And they'd always, end the conversation with just don't touch big T trauma. So I thought, well, but I do all the time. I just don't go about it probably the way they do. That we don't revisit it. We just work with where you're at. And it's a mind body sort of experience. So going back to the story, so I was doing more professional development around that. And I, I saw a video called Step Inside the Circle. And it's Fritzi Horstman, and she started Compassion Prison Project. And it's about being trauma informed. And so I watched this and I realized I had tears coming down my cheeks, not just for the stories, but honestly for the feeling of, oh my God, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to go into prison and work with them with the trauma. And that was my path in. And then bring it to the TAPS program. So I've been going in for several years. And there was a time where she was going to be doing a documentary inside. And she said, I'm just bringing a film crew. And so I said, sure, that's fine. And then she called me like days later and said, I just came back from the prison and the warden and the men asked for you to come up. So I said, absolutely, I'll be there. So I came with them. When we were doing the trauma circles, I taught them how to tap and added some other things and worked with some of them individually. And so this was on a new yard and it was a veterans yard. So they had like the trifecta of trauma where they had military trauma, they had prison trauma and childhood trauma. And so I thought that is just too much trauma for a human being to hold on to. That's a lot to recover from. And so the warden at the end of the filming went to shake my hand and thank me for showing up and participating. And I thought, you know what? We need to do a healing circle. So I said, and I want to thank you for for supporting me in doing a healing circle with these guys. And he said, okay, great. Wait, what? And I said, yeah, I said, you saw what happened here. You heard them. This is too much. I can't leave them like this. So he said, okay, let's talk next week. So we get on a Zoom and I say, yeah, I'll do a healing circle for, like 20 guys and this is what we'll do and blah, blah, blah. And he said, you mean a program? And I said, no, like a healing circle for 20 guys. And he said, you mean a program? And I'm repeating it again. And he said, Tara, I don't need a program for 20. I mean, he goes, I don't need a healing circle for 20 guys. I need a program for the entire prison and the staff. So I thought, oh, okay, that's different. Yeah. So I'm on the path and I this is how I'm being guided to this, and it came in effortless and easy, which to me is a sign it's in alignment. And so I built the program and started it at the beginning of 2024 and been running it ever since.
And is that the TAPS program?
It is. And so the interesting thing is that originally I said, I don't want to name it. And so I said, I want one of the guys to name it. And so one of them did. And he said, TAPS, the acronym. And he said, Tapping Advances Personal Serenity. And I thought, brilliant. I said, oh, that's amazing because I felt it would have been awkward if I had thought of that, but I wasn't going to think of it. It was his and I was happy to go forward with that. And so what happened is I changed it slightly I took the tapping out of it and I put in transformation, activates purpose and serenity because it's a bigger concept than just tapping, because the program isn't only tapping, it's a lot more than tapping. Tapping is an aspect of it, it's one of the techniques that we
Okay,
use. It's one of my favorite techniques. So we use that, but we also do logo synthesis. We do Byron Katie's The Work. We do, there's a lot of things we visit. We do meditation. We visit Joe Dispenza's work because the program ends with them creating a future roadmap to themselves. And so that's appropriate for that time period. So it's a very rich program, and it's not only dealing with giving you resources to deal with trauma and emotions and bringing in the concept of emotional intelligence, but it's also giving you the groundwork for the human skills that we're all spending our entire lives working on. And so that's what the program's really about. And it's been amazing. It lights me up, it excites me. I love working with them. They don't want to stop. They want to keep repeating it over and over again. So my idea is to expand the program and make a more robust program, and also a program that's redesigned so that I could bring in working with the prison staff too.
excellent, excellent. Because the justice system, the criminal system, the police, the prison staff, they're undergoing the same bureaucratic effects that the prisoners are.
They
um,
are.
yeah, and they need compassion just as much as the incarcerated. Why? Because it reminds me of was a Amor, Amora, Amore was a an attorney who said that she had gone through law school and she discovered and she quit right after she graduated. She was going to go into law, but she discovered that the justice system in the UK and in the USA, which are very similar, they're no longer about fairness. They're much more about manipulation. And I've got a lot of experience in that. I was a paralegal when I came out of college. I've spent a lot of time in the courts as a newspaper owner, a former newspaper owner. I've spent and reporter, journalist. I've spent time in the courts watching how they treat people, and I think a lot of spiritual leaders will or mentors will tell you that the it's not about what you did wrong or if you did something wrong. A lot of times, in addition to that, it's also who has the best argument. Now, when you go into a court, it's all about manipulation. Who is the best arguer? Right? And so that determines your outcome. For example, when I was a kid, when I was 27 years old back in 1988, I was arrested and charged with murder. And I was, after 7 months of trials and then a retrial, hung jury retrial. Half of them wanted to let me go, not not hang me. It's not what a hung jury is. But they tried me again, pulled out all the stops, and railroaded me, so to speak. And so I was sentenced to 16 years in prison. But you know what, Tara? I would like to see every incarcerated person do what I did in the first night in that dark suicide cell. When you get a big sentence, they put you in a cell that you cannot hang yourself in. And I looked up at the sky, and I'm Claire too. I'm many Claires. I've had many visitations for many years, ever since I was a kid. Claire Sentin, Claire Audient, and others. But I looked up and I said to myself, I will not spend one day in jail. I will not spend one day in prison. It's a mindset. I will make the best of this. I know that there's more meant for me. So what happened? Well, I went to Washington State Penitentiary and I learned, wow, I took yoga. I got a college degree. There's like thousands of guys there. And how many people show up for yoga class? About six? Really? I mean, don't ever give up on yourself. Keep learning. And so then after 4 years, I got a great letter and a knock on the door saying, Formont, you're out of here. And it was the governor of the state demanding my release because who is now the David Skeen, who's now the leader of the Arizona Law Association, owed one of my bosses a favor. I guess he introduced him to his wife. I guess they're still together. And he did my appeal and I was released. I was then given a scholarship. And I was given a scholarship because I applied to a lot of colleges because I didn't make any money and I did have an AA degree. I went into a private university. Um, Bill Gates was in and out of there. Shadow University back then in the early 90s. And I wasn't given degree, the scholarship because they didn't know anything about me being incarcerated. I was given it because I had a 4-point grade average and I didn't have any money on the books, right? So I just slipped in there. After then, eventually, I got a job with ABC television and I blew it as a newscaster because as an indigo child, I question everything I hear. After some years with ABC, I became a business analyst for associates, and I decided that I can no longer um, promote this. I can no longer promote. I saw what the news is doing. And for everybody out there watching CNN, constant negative news, throw away your TV. I did in 2007. I got out of television business. And I want to tell everybody who's incarcerated and everybody who's asking, why should we support them? Why should we help them? That uh, people in I love that you don't call them prisoners, Tara. I love that you reveal that to me. You describe them to me as people who were incarcerated or people who are incarcerated. They're people. There are fathers, there are mothers, there are daughters, there are sons, there are brothers, there are family, there's somebody's family. And I would like to give them the inspiration that you can do anything you set your mind to. And I knew that the universe had bigger things for me and I would get out. And so I'm so happy to see that you're doing what you're doing. And by the way, Tara has a huge surprise for us. She's going to do an EFT session with us. She's going to do a demo. And one more thing is the other audience, I would like to say to the people out there there are a lot of very close-minded, very low consciousness, as um, some would say, who would say, if you don't break the law, then you won't get in trouble. Or you should have thought about that before you did it. To incarcerated, to people who have been convicted. Well, that's not true because I've seen it many times sitting in the back of the courtroom taking notes for the newspapers, and I'm seeing many reporters being attacked and pressured not to share the stories. That justice system is all about manipulation. It's all about that prosecutor wants as many convictions as he can get so he can get, raise his ego, raise his standard. It's a bureaucracy. The judge appeals. Is a judge going to grant you an appeal to a false conviction if he's going against another judge that he knows? A lot of times, no. So it is a very low conscious system, the justice system, which is why Amore left. And she said, I'm not going to go into courtroom and play with people's lives. And well, credit to you, kudos to you, Amore. That's amazing. So I'm going to leave it at that because for me, that's history, and I don't regret it, Tara. I don't regret what happened to me because it's part of who I am. And you heard that voice. I've heard voices, yes. I'm clairsentient, clairaudience, all kinds of clairs. I've had some remarkable experience. But being told that as a child, wow, that's that's a load on your shoulders. And so could you tell us about the what your big surprise this actual session that you're going to do with this today and anything else you'd like to share about the TAPS program. And then after we're through with this session, we can share all the links that you have with LinkedIn, with your website to where people can help and fulfill the human need for contribution, which is the most highest spiritual need, the most beautiful need, is what you have to contribute to the world. One thing is to support people who are helping, who are contributing, like Tara Packer. So Tara, take it away. Tell us about your session and about the where you'd like to go with this program and your need to raise funds to support it.
Well, first of all, I think one of the things that I do want to say is, piggybacking off of what you said, understanding why people are incarcerated. And when I first started telling people that I was going into prisons, they said, "Aren't you scared?" And I said, "No, I'm actually really excited." And I would say, "Do you know why they're in prison?" And they would say, "Yeah, for the crimes they committed." And I said, "No, for the trauma they experienced. That's why they committed the crimes they did." A lot of people don't realize because they don't have that lived experience. There's also a lot of people that are born into poverty and situations. That's how they come into this world. And I've had people in my program that were crack babies. And I've had, a variety of people. And I don't talk to them about what's your crime. We don't even hit on that. You're just a human being to me. And everyone deserves second chances, third chances. We don't need to be thought of or thinking of people as disposable. So for me, it's about humanizing and giving them an opportunity to get back in touch with who they truly are. Because I tell them, you just got out of alignment with who you are. And this is the opportunity to realign with your true self. And so it's about the choices you make. And so when they start in the program, The first thing we start with is actually awareness. And we go straight there. Who are you? What are you? You're not your body. You're you're the one who is aware. You are awareness. You are a spiritual being having an experience here. You are a 5D being living in a 3D world. And yes, and I say to them, do you want to know where true freedom is? And of course, they want to know. And I say, it's in the 4D. It's the fourth dimension. That's the dimension where you kind of zoom out from 3D. You're aware of the 5D and you have more freedom of choice. You are not, the world, to as Peter Sage would say, it's not happening to you. So when you're caught up in the 3D, you're caught up in, I'm a victim of circumstance, I'm a victim of life. But they get past that. And so the program goes on. One of the tools that I use is tapping, and it's one of my favorite tools. And the reason that I like it so much is because it works on multiple levels and there's touch involved with it. It's kind of like acupressure for the emotions. There's also, I add some breathing in there. So it's about going inside. It's also about giving a voice to what's going on for you in the moment. And as we start to peel back the layers of an onion when we're tapping, what comes up is your subconscious starts bringing things up to you. Could be in the way of memories, sensations, a variety of things. But as you continue to work through the tapping and the layers, you begin to find more of yourself. You become more at ease. And this experience brings you into a state of calm as well. So, so it's one of my favorite. It's also very quick. I've worked with people who had PTSD. One session, they're over it. I've worked with people with autoimmune conditions, and we dive right in and we get to the source of it. And, this particular person had an experience and we got through the emotional part of it, and then we worked through some other aspects of it. But, she was like, my entire body is tingling right now. And I said, that's a beautiful thing because that's your nervous system rewiring. And that's one of the gifts of tapping. So I learned this actually online from Gary Craig, EFT, emotional freedom technique. And he actually started in the 90s, but it originally came from Roger Callahan, who started in the 80s as thought field therapy. And so what I like about what was brought to it in the 90s with Gary Craig is it created more of a universal, easier way to work with this. And so he came up with specific tapping points. But of course, as you know, there's tapping points all over your body because it works on the same meridian system as in acupuncture. And so, and on the basic idea that you have trapped stored energy and now we can release it. And that is the processing, or I like to refer to it as reprocessing. You may have had emotions and you haven't fully processed them, but you've stored them. So now we're going to reprocess the emotions. So that's how I view tapping. That is the history on tapping. And I'm happy to show all the listeners for this podcast how to do it for themselves as well.
That's amazing. Thank you. It reminds me of working with the South Koreans in Sedona for some years. They told me there are no diseases, there are just blockages of energies in your body, and we'll use tapping techniques to release those blockages. Thus, meridian exercise for self-healing, stretching and tapping yoga. Great. Let's move forward, my friend.
Okay. So there's a few things that I just want to explain first. Whenever I go into a tapping session with someone or a group of people, we kind of frame the session. So let's say you're experiencing a lot of anxiety. Okay. So we kind of create a framework around it where I'm feeling really anxious. And then I ask you on a scale, 0 to 10, like the pain scale, but I say 0 because it gives us a place to go. I don't have the problem anymore. I'm not feeling anxious. So it gives you just that further, positionality. And so we start with like, I'm feeling anxious. Then I say on a scale of 0 to 10, where are you at? Let's say they say I'm at an 8. So, okay. Then what we do is we start doing some long, deep, slow inhales, down regulating breaths. And those are the breaths that take you right into your body and it tells your body that you're safe. And that's just basically breathing in. And I have people close their eyes just to minimize visual distraction. And we'll breathe in, let's say to a count of 4, hold it for a couple beats, and try to exhale like to a count of 8. And so when you do that, that's sending that signal to the brain. Now, there's something interesting about tapping too. So when you're tapping on different places, which I'm going to show you, there's different meridian endpoints. Like this one particularly is the stomach. Okay. And when you're tapping here, it's basically, that's also where worry is. So for people who are worrying, sometimes they might even just want to tap here when they find themselves worrying. And so you can look online, there's a lot of different places that you can look that will show you where the tapping points are and what they're representative of. But anyway, so I like people to kind of know all of that going into it. And so I'm going to show you the tapping points. So the first one is the side of the hand. It doesn't matter which side of the hand you use, or you could use both simultaneously. That's fine too. And the reason that we start here is because this is the one that engages your brain, and we're stating something like, I'm feeling really anxious right now. And as you're stating that, you also then on the flip side will say something positive, like, I'm feeling really anxious, but thank God this is temporary. When you do that, it kind of tricks the brain a little bit. It's like, oh, it's not really that big of a deal. And so when we're doing this, you start to calm down. And as you start doing that, all resistance that's held in your body starts to relax. And that's how you start processing this emotionally. And so now the next thing is there's tapping points are inside corner eyebrows. And you can tap them just as you are simultaneously, or you can do it alternating. And then you can do side of eyes. And then under the eyes, on the cheekbone, under the nose, above the lip, crease of the chin. And the next one's a little bit tricky. Find the end collarbone points, come down an inch, it's a soft fleshy area, and then out a little bit, another inch, it's a soft fleshy area. This is a kidney point. It's a really important point in the body. This is where your energy comes up through the body, crosses over to the brain. So you do it. If you only have one hand, then I recommend open-handed, so you get both points. The next point is under the arm, about 4 inches down. And then the last one we're going to do is the top of the head, and it's just a gentle tapping on the top. It's not about how hard you do it, means it works better. This is a very gentle practice. It's also a very forgiving practice. You don't have to do it specifically in this order. It's just an easier way to get through this or to remember it initially. I have had experiences where I'd have an eye twitch and I would just tap on the side of the eye and I would acknowledge this eye twitch that I'm feeling right now. And I would just tap and breathe in and breathe out. And before you know it, the eye twitch would just subside, usually in like a minute. So you can use it for pain, you can use it for emotions, you can use it for to help you with belief systems where you feel a little bit, let's say, stuck with self-limiting beliefs or stuck in a narrative. So it helps you to change perception too. So basically, I'll just do one super quick run through, and that is where, let's say, if we're tapping on anxiety, we would do a big inhale, slow exhale, big inhale, slow exhale, rate ourselves on the scale, and then begin working through the tapping points and possibly just acknowledge initially the physiological symptoms. So if we start inside corner of the eyebrows, you could just acknowledge all this anxiety that I'm having. Side of eyes, feeling so much anxiety in my body right now. Under the eyes, I feel these sensations, like a tightening in my chest. Under the nose, maybe some butterflies in my stomach. Crease of chin, feeling really tense. Collarbone area. And this is not comfortable for me. And then under the arms. But this is how I'm feeling right now. I honor my feelings. And then top of head. I can also let this go. I can choose to let this go. And I choose that right now. Okay. And then you breathe in. And then exhale. And then you check back in with yourself and you say, wow, where am I on the scale? Or did anything come up? You know, maybe a memory, maybe a thought, maybe a reason why you're feeling anxious. And then you continue and you do another round. I'm feeling anxious because somebody said something to me and it found it really upsetting. And I was afraid about, you know, some situation, and you just continue to tap through it until it disappears. And
Oh, thank
it
you.
could be
Thank
5 minutes.
That was amazing. I've been going through a lot lately, and I think people across the USA are going through a lot lately. Right now, wow. And something came up for me. Something very unusual for me happened. I got a really bad leg cramp. That's why I jumped up and I breathed it out because I've been taught to do that. And I realized that I've been holding on to a lot of stress and not dealing with it somatically, as you mentioned before. Somatic meaning with the body, and um, our um, our brain and our body work together. And no, we're not our brain and we're not our body. We are our awareness. Our body belongs to us and our brain belongs to us. And it's best to let them serve us, right? So
Mhm.
thank you for that. And before we go, I just want to, could you bring up, that was amazing. And you have some sessions, live sessions like that. Where can people go, Tara? And I will put those links down below on the YouTube channel of the podcast, and they can click there and find you. And so tell me where people can go and help you in your journey since childhood. Wow, that was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. People can go to the website, which is TAPS, TAPS, program.org. And there's a donate button there if they want to donate um, to the cause, to spreading this out to more prisons and more people, which is my intention. And they can also go to my personal website, which is Terra 2.0, and it's the number two, the word point, and then a 0.com, Terra2.0.com, to learn some more as well. Now, I am on LinkedIn, and I will provide you all the information on that. I'm also on Instagram. And the other thing is that I am going to be doing some workshops coming up, and one that's a fairly new one that I have done with the guys inside, and it's on basically processing rejection. And I think this is also a really good time for it as people are losing jobs and people are going through the, interview process and just in a variety of ways. It's not even just about jobs and work, but
Right.
uh, rejection, I feel like, is one of the most prominent things that a human experiences. I don't think you get off this planet without feeling rejected, without
I
being bullied.
agree. I mean, that was my trauma back in 1988. Um, I had a gun on me. I was attacked by a couple of guys who tried to get my gun away. I was defending myself. And when I was convicted, I felt rejected by society. So I
Mm.
really resonate with that. That was huge. And the only resolution to that was working with several people in groups like the South Koreans and running the meditation centers there is to learn to love myself first. Love yourself first because everybody is worthy of love. It doesn't matter where you've been and what you've done. You are worthy of love because eventually we are all one. Take it or leave it. Thank
Yeah,
you, Tara. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you for having me on here. And I just want to say, the name of this, it's time to rewrite your life. I mean, that's the same thing that I take into the prisons. It's time to rewrite your life.
And that's what a woman told me in my yoga room before she disappeared in front of my eyes. And I had to ask for clarity what that meant. So let's run with it. Right now, of all time, I think it's time for us to rewrite our life.